welcome back to Tractor Hoarders. My name's Hans. Today we're going to be taking a look at Eldon's John Deere B. So if you saw the last video, we picked this up, transported it here to my property with my other tractors. And I really, when I was at his property, I kind of looked it over and I got a feel for, some of the things it might need. Today we're going to do a detailed inspection of some of the different things going on with this tractor. And I'm going to take you guys with me as we actually look at this and do it. I brought the tractor here, unloaded it. All the tires were flat. The rear ones are dry rotted. They're in really rough shape. I actually was able to put air on the front tires and it seems to be holding. So that's a plus. Now, one of the things with this tractor is the front steering is locked up. Like something in here is rusted. And one of the observations I made when I moved the tractor, sometimes I'll see water dripping out of here, out of that front pedestal there. So something in there is rusted. When this tractor was taken apart for restoration, we'll just say 20 years ago, one of the things that has to be done on these is in order to get the hood off, you have to take the steering shaft out. So we know that that's been taken out of there before. So to me, what that means in terms of probability is that at some point water got down in here, whether it was from the top or from the front, I don't know. But I'm assuming that's what has caused something to rust in there to where the front wheels do not turn. And by that, I mean the wheels turn on the hub. It's just I can't turn the tractor left or right. Now, on the topic of the steering, this shaft here, it does move. So I don't think it has anything to do with that. It's more from the gears in here down where I suspect the problem to be. So what we'll probably have to do with this is take these covers off, maybe put some type of solution in there, I don't know, diesel, just let it soak and then kind of jar this thing around a little bit and see if we can get it loose. Now, an additional observation on this tractor, the radiator overflow tube, it's intact. It's got some holes up here, but all that can be fixed. I was just kind of pleased that it was actually intact. This tractor does have the front shutters on it. Of course, they're rusted solid, which is not uncommon. So we'll see if we can get those freed up. That would be really nice if we could. None of my other John Deeres have those on them. They've all been taken off, probably because over the years they rusted. In the radiator, if you take off this cap here, it's not the best sight in the world. It's a little crusty in there. Looking at the air cleaner here, we know that there's probably oil in it because it is pretty oily there. Not a bad thing. It'd be interesting to open that up, but that's not a priority for me right now. Another observation I made was that on the exhaust pipe here, there was duct tape at the top. But that duct tape has kind of disintegrated and now it's open. And I'm sure that's why the engine's locked up because, the tape disintegrated. Now it was an open pathway. And water was able to go, in the opening, go down the exhaust pipe and into the manifold and down into the head. So I'm sure that's how water got into it, and that's what led to the engine being locked up. Now, when we get close to the fan here, the fan does jiggle around, so that means to me that the fan shaft is fine. It seems like the fan obviously doesn't turn because the governor can't turn because the engine's locked up. Not that I'd be able to turn it anyhow, but I don't have a concern with that. Also, the belt pulley, it turns. So that's a good thing. Along with that, the clutch does snap in and out, and it actually feels pretty decent. So I'm happy about that. The brake pedals, they will go down and they will return as they're supposed to. So those are positives. For the PTO shaft, let's see, it's not turning now, but let's see. Yeah, so that turns. So I'm really not extremely worried about this rear end. I think it's likely the rear end's going to be fine. I think most of the concern is going to be around the engine here and getting it free. I did notice that the throttle control lever here is seized. So if you go through all the linkage, you know, obviously it goes from there, the governor goes up to the carburetor. Things are free on this end. So because of that, I'm pretty sure whatever is seized is really just in this area here. Hopefully that's not too big of a deal to break free. Just have to be careful because, you know, they're cast parts and I don't want to break them. Fortunately, it's easy to get replacements if I need to because there's so many of these tractors made and so many of them parted out. So we'll see what happens with that, but I'm not extremely worried about that part of it. I was looking at the manifold, and when I initially was looking at this tractor, I thought the manifold was rusted through. However, I don't think that's the case. There's kind of a shield around the manifold, and that's what's rusted through. So that makes me feel a lot better. It doesn't look like I'll necessarily have to replace the manifold, which is good. I also don't know if there's a characteristic about these earlier styled Bs where that shield is necessary. I've heard of people having issues with boiling the fuel in the fuel tank. So maybe that shield is there to block some of the heat from rising up to the tank. I don't know. If you guys know what that's about, leave me a comment down below. And let me know if you think we actually need it there or not. I assume we probably do, or else John Deere wouldn't have put it there. So the carburetor. The carburetor was initially very seized. I couldn't move the throttle at all. And the choke was frozen. In fact, the choke still is frozen, but when I went to go move this lever, it actually broke the choke rod. So at minimum, I'll need a choke rod, but at this point, I'm just planning to get a whole carburetor kit for it, and we'll rebuild that carburetor. And, you know, it's been a long time since this tractor has run, but it did run, so it'd be cool if the magneto was good and didn't need anything, but if it does, we'll get that addressed. Not the top priority, of course. I was also looking at the plate here, the serial number plate, and it says 116368. When I was talking to Eldon, he has mentioned that this was known as a 1939 model. However, that serial number, if you look it up, matches to being a late 1941. And there's been some other visual indicators that some folks have brought up to me that, you know, confirm that this is a 41. So from this point forward, I mean, it looks to me like it is a 41. Nobody would have swapped out the rear case and put a different case there. Like, that's just really unlikely. You know, on the Ford tractors, it wasn't uncommon for these engines to be swapped. So you might end up with a serial number there that doesn't necessarily match the year the tractor actually is. But that's really not the case on John Deere. Now, if you guys happen to watch the video where we were loading this tractor up, you might have noticed that there was a part where a bunch of coolant came out of the bottom of this. And the loader forks we were using on the Kubota, they hit here on this lower radiator pipe, and that's just cracked. That's something I'll have to replace. Fortunately, like I said, there's a lot of these tractors made, so I'm really not worried about that at all. I'll probably find one on eBay or something. My biggest concern with this tractor is just the fact that the engine's seized up. Like, that's never a good thing. Flywheel won't budge at all. I think what I'm going to do is start by taking out the spark plugs, and we'll just have a quick little visual inspection in there, just at least the best we can. And I'm also gonna maybe I don't know, maybe we'll put some type of solution in the hole there so that we can start soaking these cylinders, just in hopes that this thing will come free a little easier. So overall, this tractor to me looks pretty complete. You know, it's just got this small tank on there, which Eldon mentioned he had, his dad had put that on there just so that he could continue to run the tractor and move it around. But he actually did give me a lot of other sheet metal and things like that, and I'll show you guys that real quick. Those items are still on my trailer. So on here we've got the gas tank, we have the hood, I've got fenders, I've got the grills, you know, and then a bunch of other random stuff. We got the nose cone there, little dash, and the toolbox that goes between the frame rails. This is you know, that goes by the radiator up on the front pedestal. Gas tank holders, hood patch, which is pretty common. So I'm really pleased to have all that stuff. Honestly, between the tractor and that stuff, I have most of the parts. You know, I'm gonna need different fasteners and stuff like that, which isn't a big deal. Looking at these rear axles, you know, maybe there was some seepage here over the years. Maybe the axle seals need replaced. It wouldn't be too surprising. But those are things we'll figure out after the tractor's running. I thought something else that was pretty cool is that the drawbar, it looks to me like it's seen very little usage. Like this hole's wallered out just a tiny bit, but the others certainly aren't. And he had mentioned that this tractor had been used primarily for a sickle mower. And one thing I do see here is that this cast piece here is cracked and broken. I don't know specifically on this tractor, but I'm assuming if you take that off, that's how you get to the seals that you would replace around the PTO shaft. So I'll see if I can hunt down one of those, and that really shouldn't be a big deal to find, I would assume. Let's climb up here on this thing. The seat actually feels good. It's pretty firm. I've been on some of these where they're pretty sloppy, so that, you know, that's a good thing. The gear shifter here, initially it didn't want to move very well, but in the process of loading this up, I did squirt some oil down in there, and this is moving a lot freer now. So that's a good thing. The PTO, you know, selector, it does move, assuming I got everything lined up right. High-low moves. So those are all good things. Got this oil gauge here, which to me doesn't look like the original. But again, I really do like how this clutch feels. This clutch is probably the least sloppy of any of my tractors, so that's kind of neat. So as I mentioned a little earlier, I think one of the first things we're going to do is take these spark plugs out. Now in order to do that, I need to remove these guards here. I probably could get them out there without this, but this will just make it a little bit easier. I notice up here this is a little rusty, so if I'm not careful with this, I'll probably twist it and break it off, which I don't want to do. This has some Champion D16 spark plugs in it, which are pretty common back in the day, especially when you're working a tractor. Anymore, like, you know, for a tractor that's kind of in a parade type scenario, I'd personally run like a D21 or a D23 if I was doing Champions. But I tend to do the auto lights, like the I think 4116 or the 388s or 386. But we'll worry about that later. It is always good to get a reading off the spark plug and just kind of see what kind of condition it is in, because that tells you a little bit about the engine and how it was when it was running last. I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but there looks to be oil, you know, where the gap should be. So, you know, if this thing's an oil burner, I don't know, it could be. Guess that's something we'll find out later. Another observation is there's a bunch of dirt here in the spark plug hole, so that isn't necessarily a great thing to me. Inside there I can see it on the threads. Let's go have a look at the other side. This is actually pretty tight here, but we'll just use a wrench, give ourselves a little more torque. There we go. That plug's a little stubborn, so I'm going to get a socket and we'll see what that one's like when we take it out. Spark plug's really rusty looking on the outside. Oh man. Yeah, that's not good. So looking at this plug, hopefully you guys can see this. This plug is just full of dirt and rust. So that's not a great sign. I don't know if you guys can see in this hole or not, but there's just a lot of crud buildup where the end of the plug would be. You know, not great, not necessarily what I want to see. But with a locked up engine, I'm not too surprised. So just seeing what we're seeing so far, you know, as much as I'd love to not have to open this engine, wouldn't be surprised if I do have to. Yeah, that's great. I actually do have a little scope that I could put in there, but I don't have it with me, so we'll probably try that on our next trip. Put a funnel there. Let's put some diesel in here. That's it for that side. Full. Now I'm actually tempted to take this and dump some down the exhaust too. It would just follow the same path that water did, and it's going to go into the manifold and down into the engine. But then at the same time, if we do get this thing running, it's going to be smoking for a little while. I don't know, I'll think about that. Yeah, so those cylinders are full of diesel now. A lot of people would say put some like acetone or maybe ATF in there. I don't happen to have any with me right now, but that's something we'll add to the mix later. Maybe even some Marvel Mystery Oil, I don't know. If you guys have suggestions on a good mix to throw into this engine to see if we can break it free on its own, let me know in the comments what you've had success with. Now something else I've seen people do is make basically a long bar with some studs that go out, you know, perpendicular to the bar and go into those holes. And it's not that you want a big bar for leverage, but what you would do is maybe hang weights on that bar. So over time, just as a slow method of putting pressure on things, you could let those weights and gravity do the job. That's something I'll consider, but I don't know how effective it would be with how these are lined up like this. I really wouldn't have a whole lot of you know, way for it to move before, you know, gravity has its limits. It's gonna want to go down, and we're already pointed kind of down. Now the alternative to this is that I could rig something up to where if I did that, you know, maybe I could apply pressure going backwards somehow or something like that. I don't know. If you guys think that's a idea worth pursuing, let me know on that too. Now something else I was thinking about doing was pulling off this top plate here on the crankcase. That would allow us to see down in the crankcase, and we'd get to see at least the condition of the crankshaft, and you know, just the crankcase in general and what things look like in there. Does it have water in it and what? So that's something that's probably worth doing. On these, I don't know if like this whole thing is meant to just screw off to where you could see down that circular hole. I'm not expecting it to come easy, but I guess it surprised me. Crankcase breather. Yeah, you can't really see down in there. Let me show you guys. So there is kind of a plate there that's in the way. There is you can see, you know, there's a passage that connects, but we're just gonna have to take that top plate off. Alright, so looking in the crankcase, I actually like what I see. This is great. Everything in here looks good. There's oil in the bottom. Let's see if I can put the camera down in there. So right now we're pointing at the right side cylinder. And I don't know that I can actually get us in a position to look at the left side. Let me see here. Here's the left side cylinder, possibly. I'll see during editing if we can actually see it. Gotta be honest, I'm pretty pleased at looking inside that crankcase. We'll see what the cylinders look like. I'm gonna go ahead and put that cover back on because we don't want anything getting in here. So we really just gotta see what's you know, holding these pistons in place. Hopefully it's not too bad in there. When I was talking to Eldon when I picked this thing up, he said that this engine turned over about a year ago. So sometime in the last year is when things froze up. Fortunately, here in Colorado, we don't get that much rain and precipitation. I mean, we do get a good amount of snow, but my hopes is that this thing isn't too much of an issue. I'd love to be able to get this engine free without taking it apart. I don't think we're going to be that lucky, and it'd be a good idea just to see what the condition of everything is in there. But a guy can dream. I'm going to open up this steering box here, and we're just going to see what's going on in there. It'd be really nice if I could move this thing around a little bit easier by being able to steer it. So let's take a quick look at that. Let's have a little look-see. Yeah, that's horrible. I mean, it could be worse, but there's water that's been sitting in there. There's water sitting on top of there. I think I'm going to put some diesel in. Now, I fully expect that this is going to be seeping out because that front doesn't really have a good seal on it, but that's fine. I want this diesel to soak down in there and get down as far as it can, and hopefully we'll break up some of this rust. Yeah, so we got this all full there. There was some chunks of metal in there, so I think one of the gears might have broke at some point. Maybe it was trying to be forced, I don't know. Ooh, look at this. It's steering again. Oh my gosh, that makes me happy. This will make it so much easier to move this thing around. So obviously whatever was rusted in there, it really wasn't too bad. We're gonna keep that in there. I'm just gonna hope that that diesel continues to soak down the front pedestal. And if it runs all the way through, that's fine. That'll just kind of get all that stuff lubricated up a little bit. That's fantastic. I'm so glad I can steer this thing again. That's awesome. Just having a little progress like that helps so much. Okay, so I know this is a bad idea. We're gonna do one more test. I'm gonna put the tractor in gear, and I'm just gonna try and budge it forward a little bit with the Ford and see if there's any chance things will break free. I'm really hoping this thing is really not that seized up, but I guess we'll see here in a second. So I've got the tractor in high 6th gear, and we're just gonna kind of gently pull it forward, just see what happens. Let's hope you see that flywheel turn. Well, obviously no turning over, but I'm really not that surprised. I'm not going to get aggressive with it. You know, if I really wanted to probably put a little bit more on it, I'd disengage the clutch, we'd get the thing rolling a little bit, maybe even take it down the hill and re-engage the clutch and just see what happens. But we're not going to do that. Let's let these cylinders soak, and next time we'll take a little deeper look into this thing. Well, it's starting to get a little more windy out here today, which makes recording difficult. It just messes up my audio. So we're going to call today done. We'll let these cylinders soak and we'll see what we can get into next time. If you guys aren't already subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like the video, leave me some comments. If you have suggestions on what we need to be doing next or just things I need to be cautious of, let me know down below. Thanks guys, we'll see you in the next one.